Right now, John Summit is one of the biggest DJs on the planet. He just closed the main stage at Ultra.
I fucking love you guys, thank you!
He sold out Madison Square Garden in under 2 hours, and he just released a whole new album. He's got his own record label, his own festival, and Barack Obama literally put his song in his playlist.
Where You Are is one of his favorite tracks from 2023.
But he wasn't always like that. Just about 5 years ago, this guy was sitting in a cubicle at an accounting firm making $65,000 a year with zero connections in the music industry. And what I'm about to break down for you isn't just how he got famous, but it's the exact marketing and branding playbook he used to build an empire that most people in music will never figure out. Things like how he built his fan base when every venue on earth was shut down, how he turned a record label into a full business machine, and how he structures his entire life and career in a way that most artists would never even think of. This is the story of John Summit. Before any of the glamour, the lights, and the shining DJ stages, he was just John Schuster. He's just some guy from the suburbs of Chicago working on 12-hour days at Ernst & Young for $65,000 a year. He graduated from the University of Illinois with an accounting degree, and he even got his CPA license. And on paper, he had it all figured out. But what was happening behind the background is completely a different story. Every single night, right after work, he'd come home from a 12-hour days, crack open a cold brew just to stay awake, and open his laptop to make beats in his bedroom. He had no fancy studio, no connections, no managers, just him and production software he taught himself how to use from YouTube tutorials. Now you might be thinking, he always knew he wanted to be a musician, right? He was probably making music his entire life. But actually, not really. John literally stumbled into DJing because he got fired from a bartending job in college.
So getting fired as a bartender is actually a pretty common occurrence at the college I went to. If you serve someone underage, you get let go. But I still knew I wanted to work at the bar because I was good friends with everybody, and they said they needed a DJ. I'm like, okay, I think I can do this.
This one decision didn't really lead to some big break, but instead it led to years of playing in frat parties, college bars, and open format sets whenever the venue would have him. Then, after he graduates from college, it turned into a double life that most people didn't really know about John. During the weekdays, he's doing spreadsheets and audits from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Then on the weekends, he's DJing warehouse parties with his friends and learning what house music actually was. And on top of all of that, he was sending demos to record labels and getting rejected over and over again. And one label in particular, called Defected Records, rejected him nearly 100 times. You heard that right, not 10, not 20, close to almost 100 different times. So before he was John Summit, he was just a guy who went to college, got his degree, even got his CPA license, landed a job at one of the biggest firms in the world, and then he threw it all away to make music in his bedroom every night out of passion. He's working a job that he hates, he makes music that no records are signing, and he's getting told no by all of the labels that he wanted to get into. He had no connections and no money left over at the end of the month, and that's just who John Schuster was. But then something happened that would force him out of that double life for good, and it wasn't even his choice. So here's what most people get wrong about the John Summit story. They think that he had this brave moment where he walked into his boss office and said, "I'm done, I'm going to chase my dream," and that's it. But that's not actually what happened. He left Ernst & Young because the hours were brutal. And if you're working in the big four firms, you probably would know.
This is not gonna work because everyone else is like working much better than I was. And then at that point, I already had record label releases and I was starting to tour on the weekends. So I was probably coming in to work pretty late too and very bloodshot eyes.
And eventually, that job let him go. And in his own words, he was a terrible employee because mentally, he was already somewhere else.
People really dedicate their lives to that, where my mind was kind of all in on the music and I kind of just did the accounting to fund the music lifestyle, I guess.
And the thing is, by this point, he wasn't just a nobody. He's already been releasing music. His new EP called Touch Me came out on Psycho Disco in 2018. He had tracks on Toolroom Records, Dirty Bird, Repopulate Mars, and even some Chicago legends like Jeannie Ferris was playing his music in sets at Spy Bar. So he actually had some sort of proof that his music could work. He just hasn't broken through commercially yet. And then something pivotal happened. His parents told him something that honestly might have saved his career. His parents said that since he has a degree, whenever he runs out of money, he can always get another accounting job. And that gave him the confidence to keep music going. So now he's fully on his own. No salary, no safety net, other than the degree that he could fall back on. He's booking his own shows, throwing warehouse parties with his friends around Chicago, making a couple of $100 a night. But at this point, there's nothing really life-changing yet, but that's enough to survive. And for the first time in his life, he had full days to actually sit down and make music instead of squeezing it into the gap between midnight and 3 a.m. But then picture this, March 2020, he's broke, he's been fired, he's been playing small rooms for a couple of $100 a show, and then
it's just a complete destruction.
More than 7 million Americans are known to have been infected.
There are many of us that were here for a very long time.
a global pandemic shuts down every single venue on the planet. No clubs, no festival, no warehouse parties, there were nothing. And for most DJs, that would have been the final sign to go back to their regular job. But for John, COVID was actually become the biggest opportunity of his entire career. And the way he used it is something that any creator, artist, or even entrepreneur can learn from right now. And real quick, before I keep going, if you're watching this and you're learning something new from this breakdown, please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, and it will really help a growing channel like mine. And now, let's get back to John Summit. So it's 2020. John has no job, barely any money, and he's finally in a position where he can make music full time. And then COVID hits, and every single venue on the planet goes dark. Now, most DJs during this time just went quiet and waited for the world to reopen again, but John didn't do that. But instead, he got on Instagram Live every single day. And then he also started doing Twitch streams where he'd DJ full sets, read every single comment on what he was playing, and he even made YouTube tutorials teaching people how to produce music. Then he launched a Discord server where he'd just hang out with people. There was no rules, no agenda, no promo, just hanging out like friends. Because there were no shows to buy tickets to. There was not even new music to push out yet. He was just building real relationships with his people and his fans at the time. And that single decision ended up being one of the most important marketing decisions in his entire career. Now, while all of this was happening, he's also in his bedroom making music non-stop. And one night, he sits down and makes a track called Deep End. The whole song came together in a single session. He had a vocal sample sitting in his folder for months, and he could never make anything work out of it. But for some reason during that night, everything just clicked. He was so hyped about the music that he posted a clip straight into his socials. The clip took off immediately, and then something wild happened.
Studio all-nighter, it was worth it.
After he released the song, every major label started reaching out wanting to sign it. And remember, he'd been sending demos to Defected Records for years at this point. They'd rejected him over and over and over again. But now at this time, Defected Record was the one calling him. The song Deep End, dropped in June 2020, became the longest running #1 on Beatport that entire year. BBC Radio 1 picked it up, Pete Tong named it the essential new tune, and then Side Piece remixed it in October, and that remix became his most streamed song ever.
I've been trying not to go off the deep end.
Now, to put the numbers in perspective, he started 2020 with just 33,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. But by the end of that same year, he had over 2 million monthly listeners. But here's what I want you to understand about why this actually worked. It wasn't just because of the song. Now sure, the song Deep End was a great track, but great tracks come out every single week and most of them just disappear into the abyss. One of the reasons why Deep End exploded the way that it did was because he had already spent months building community that was already ready to support whatever he put out. Those people on the Instagram Live, on Twitch, on Discord, they weren't just listeners at this point. They were fans. They were invested in his journey. So when that song dropped, they didn't just stream it. People shared it, people posted about it on social media. They made it part of their whole identity. And that's the difference between having fans and having just followers. And this is the big part that applies to anyone watching this right now. You don't need a pandemic to run this playbook. The principle is exactly the same whether you're a musician, a business owner, or a content creator, or someone just building a brand. Most people only show up when they have something to sell. A tour, when there's a launch, a new offer, a new product. But when you look at John Summit, he showed up every single day when he had nothing to ask for. And that's exactly why people showed up for him when he did. Now, the real question is, if you're building a brand, are you really building genuine relationship with your audience when you have nothing to ask for them? Because that's the gap that most people never really get close to. And then in 2021, everything compounded. He released Sun Came Up with Sophie Tucker.
When the sun came up.
And then he released Human featuring Echoes, which went #1 on US dance radio. And by the end of 2021, he had over 4 million monthly Spotify listeners. Dancing Astronaut named him Breakout Artist of the Year, and he became Beatport's top-selling artist across all genres. And he was still just getting started. So at this point, John Summit has done a lot of things. He had a growing fan base and an actual momentum on his music. But here's where most artists plateau. Most artists keep just releasing new music, they keep touring, they stay in this cycle of make a song, play a show, make a song, and play a show, and do that over and over and over again. But John didn't do that. He decided to build something even bigger than himself. So while he's touring all over the world, in Europe, Australia, and the US in 2022, he decided to start his own record label and events brand. He originally called it Off the Grid, but after the trademark issue, he rebranded it to Experts Only.
And the reason why we named it Experts Only is I named myself Summit because of my love of skiing and mountains. I always thought it was super cool, the double black diamond sign. And when you go on like the toughest ski runs, you see the Experts Only. And sometimes they'll say below, proceed with caution. And I always thought that was super badass.
Now here's what made this label way different than what most artists do. Most DJs who start a label just use it to release their own music, but John built it like a real business. He brought in people like Toby Andrews, the former president of Astral Works, as a label manager. He then hired Jack David from Universal Music Group as a head of marketing. And then he signed artists like Mau P, Max Styler, Leighton Giordani, and Oddmob. And every single artist who signed the label got access to something that most independent artists never get. They get access to John's audience, John's marketing team, and John's event platform. In his own words, when you sign a record to his label, you're not just getting a distribution, you're getting a giant marketing arm and a built-in community ready for your music. So the artists will win because they get exposure they couldn't buy on their own. And John wins because every artist on his roster make the Experts Only brand even bigger. And that is the leverage that he was building. But to no one's surprise, that's not the only thing that he did. Then he took the same approach with partnerships. He became a brand ambassador for Bose. He signed a deal with Fontainebleau in Las Vegas as their first ever resident DJ at Live, which is one of the most exclusive nightclubs in the world. And that deal alone took him into 7 figures. But do you notice what's happening here? He's not just getting paid to show up. Every single partnership he takes reinforces the entire brand. Bose connects him to the audio and lifestyle space, and then Live connects him to the luxury nightlife scene. The partnership aren't just random endorsements here and there. They're strategic upgrades which makes the whole brand better. Then the events become the next layer. He teamed up with Dom Dolla to launch a collaborative event he called Everything Always. He started throwing Experts Only events in unique locations like a 400 million year old limestone cave in Tennessee, ski slopes in Vail and Tahoe. Then in September 2025, he launched the inaugural Experts Only Festival at Randall's Island in New York. Over 50,000 people showed up, and it became the largest dance music event in the whole region at the time. And they're already doing it again in 2026 with an even bigger lineup. And while all of this is building, the personal milestones keep stacking. He sold out Madison Square Garden in under 2 hours. He sold 3 nights at LA's Kia Forum with over 45,000 tickets sold. He headlined the O2 Arena in London, became Forbes 30 Under 30, and his debut album, Comfort and Chaos, debuted at number 2 on the Billboard Top Dance Albums chart and number 39 on the Billboard 200. And to top it all off, Barack Obama named Where You Are as one of his favorite songs of the year. So if you take a huge step back and look at where he's actually been building, it's not just a music career, it's a whole machine and ecosystem. The label feeds the events feeds the partnership feeds the brand, and the brand feeds everything else. Every single piece makes the other pieces stronger. That's not just luck and talent. That's a whole careful strategic decisions to build the whole engine. And it all happened within just about 4 years of the release of Deep End. But the way he manages all of it behind the scenes is the part that nobody ever talks about. So you see the sold out arenas, the brand deals, the festival headlining slots, but what you don't see is how John Summit actually runs his day to day. And this is the part that I think is the most valuable for anyone watching this, whether you're building a music career, a business, or even a personal brand. At his peak, he was doing over 250 shows a year. That's about 4 to 5 shows every single week. And then he realized at that pace, it wasn't sustainable. So he made a key decision that most artists in his position would never make. He cut back to 2 big shows a week, less shows, but bigger rooms, which means higher ticket sales and more scarcity. He's making way more money doing less tour dates because each one feels like an event instead of just another gig on the calendar. And then there's how he protects his creative time. He has a hard rule that nobody talks to him after 5 p.m. and that's when he creates. He doesn't negotiate contracts, he doesn't handle business operation, he doesn't sit on calls. He sends all of that to his team because he figured out early that the thing that makes everything work is the music. And if the music stops being good, the label doesn't really matter. So he protects that time like it's the most valuable thing that he has, because it is. His debut album, Comfort and Chaos, was made during the first month he'd taken off in 3 years. And the whole concept behind the album is a duality of being John Summit, the performer, and John Schuster, the introverted guy who just wanted to stay home and make music.
Comfort and chaos is that I went from this accounting job of this extreme comfort but boredom, you know what I mean, and threw myself in chaos, and just trying to find the balance of it all was kind of the whole theme.
And now his second album, Control Escape, just recently dropped on April 15th, and even the rollout strategy is intentional. He's dropping a new track every single Wednesday, and in his words, as a former accountant, he knows how much hump days really suck. The album title itself is a nod to leaving the corporate life, Control Escape, and the release of the album happens on no other than tax dates off. He's selling CPA drawstring bags, and he does all of this so that he can turn his accounting past into a brand asset instead of something to hide from. And most people probably would want to run away from that boring chapter in their story. But instead, John made it a part of his whole brand. And I think one of the real takeaways from how he operates, he's not just a DJ who got lucky with a viral song. He runs a whole career the way a CEO runs a company. He's got a label team with a major label experience. He got boundaries around his creative time. He scaled back his shows to increase demand. And he delegates everything else that isn't the core thing that he wants to do, which is the music. And that's not how artists usually think. That's how entrepreneurs think. So let me bring this full circle. In 2022, John Summit played Ultra Music Festival for the first time. He wasn't on the main stage yet. He was on the smaller Resistance stage on the side. And in 2025, he made it to the main stage for a back-to-back set with Dom Dolla as Everything Always. Then in 2026, he got the solo closing slot on the main stage of Ultra Miami. This is the single most prestigious slot in all of dance music, and he earned it in just 4 years.
Miami, I fucking love you guys. Thank you.
But if you only see the main stage moment, you miss every single thing that actually got him there. So let me break it down what John Summit really did, because it's a playbook that works whether you're a musician, a founder, or anybody that's trying to build something. The first thing that he did was he built a community before he had a product to sell. During COVID, he showed up every single day on Instagram Live, Twitch, and even Discord when he had nothing to promote. That meant when Deep End was dropped, he didn't have to convince anybody to care because they already did care and he would already have fans. Second, he didn't just release music, he built the whole infrastructure. He built Experts Only to not only be a vanity label, it's a business with major label executives, a whole marketing team, and a roster of artists, and an events platform for the community. Every single piece is carefully thought through to feed one another. The label grows the artist grows the event, and the event grows the brand as a whole. And the brand will always attract new partnerships. And third, he treated partnerships as brand extensions, not just as single paychecks. When he partnered with Bose, Fontainebleau, Live, none of these are just random brand partnerships. Every single deal reinforces who he is as a whole brand. The fourth thing is he scaled back to scale up. He went from 250 shows a year into 2 big ones every single week. He had less volume, more demand, more revenue, and even have time to create better music. He protected his creative time, delegated everything else, and focused only on the thing that nobody else can do for him. And fifth, he turned his story into his brand. The old accounting job, corporate escape, most people would just bury that chapter of their life. But instead, he had a twist on it. He put it on a t-shirt. His album is called Control Escape. He made his past one of the most relatable and marketable part of his entire identity. And those 5 moves, none of those are just music strategies. Those are business strategies. And that's the story of John Summit, from a cubicle at Ernst & Young to closing the biggest stage in dance music. And the reason why I made this video isn't just because I found his story impressive, but it's because the moves that he made are moves that all of us can do ourselves. Whatever journey that we're in, whether it's music, business, or any other creative endeavors, we can apply the same strategies that he did to become the version that we want to become, whatever that goal is. So if you like this video, make sure to click that subscribe button and drop a comment and tell me which artists you want me to do a breakdown next. I read every single suggestion, and as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.